The RBA uses open market operations to target the cash rate, and it continually buys and sells bonds in order to keep the cash rate at its target. Once the cash rate is set, market forces mean that changes flow through to long-term interest rates. But how do short-term rates affect long-term rates? What determines the shape of the yield curve? In this module and the next, we will look at two theories behind the term structure of interest rates and the shape of the yield curve. The first of those theories is the pure expectations theory, and we will look at the assumptions behind this theory. The principal assumption is that borrowers and lenders are indifferent between securities with different maturities. They don't have a preference. They will switch between short, medium and long-term securities as needed to get the best value, which means low interest rates for borrowers and high interest rates for lenders. The other assumption behind this theory is that the capital market is perfect, which in this case mainly means that there are no transaction costs. No transaction costs mean that market participants can move between different maturities without incurring costs. Of course, there are transaction costs in the real world, but this doesn't undermine the main conclusion of the theory. Assumptions like these simply make it easier to understand the theory when we are first introduced to it. Let's think through what logically follows from the assumptions that we have just made. If short-term rates and long-term rates are equal, say 5%, but you expect short-term rates to go up in the future, say 6%, would you prefer a single long-term investment or a series of successive short-term investments? If you are indifferent between short and long-term investments, then in this scenario you would prefer a series of successive short-term investments. You could then roll over your short-term investment when it matures and get higher rates in the future. Thinking this through further, if as a result of what we've just discussed, you and everyone else is just as smart, decides that they prefer to invest short-term rather than long-term, but there are still people who want to borrow long-term, so what will happen to long-term interest rates? Will they increase, decrease, or remain the same? We would expect long-term rates to increase until they are high enough to attract investors. At that point, short-term investments do not provide higher returns. Once the interest rates are in equilibrium, you will get exactly the same return from a series of short-term investments or one long-term investment, given that long-term interest rates have increased. So to complete our description of the pure expectations theory, we can add to the assumptions that we discussed earlier the following prediction. Long-term rates will be determined by investor expectations regarding future short-term rates. Investors will switch between short, medium and long-term securities, and market forces will then act to ensure that there is no easy money to be made. Long-term rates will adjust so that they reflect expected future short-term rates. Specifically, long-term rates will be the geometric average of expected future short-term rates. We'll explain what geometric average means a little more in a later topic, but for now it just means that the result from investing long-term will be the same as the expected result from investing in a series of short-term securities, and this is the way in which long-term rates reflect market expectations about future short-term rates.